What's up, everybody? My name is Vincent. Welcome to Cryptolution, where we talk about everything under the moon in the crypto universe. Today, we have a very special guest on our channel. Now, he's widely known as an early American internet investor, entrepreneur, and now co-CEO of the most trusted top tier one exchange in the world, and that is Kraken. Let's please welcome to the stage the man, the myth, the legend, Arjun Sethi. Arjun, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Now, I noticed something. You actually are wearing a really fun t-shirt. What is that that you're wearing?
I'm wearing some of the gear and the goods that some of the folks in the dog community sent over to me. So that's what I'm wearing. I have a t-shirt here. My kids have all the fluffy dogs. I got the runestone, the hats, like everything.
I love that. I love that. I feel like I should rock one of those next time when we do an interview, but that looks amazing on you. So I'm excited to cover all the exciting things that Kraken is building and also innovating as well. But before we dive deep into that, I want to rewind back into your history, as I feel like this is going to circle back later in our interview. So let's first talk about the first category, which is basically your journey spanning from your startup scaling and founding products at like Yahoo for that
Yeah.
matter, and also backing disruptive technologies through Tribe Capital. Now, given that track record, what aspects of your personal and professional history drive your curiosity to explore early stage innovation in crypto, especially in areas that many still may overlook or dismiss?
Yeah, there's so many ways in which I could explain this, but if I was to take a step back, I think if you're building, investing, or partnering, at least for me personally, I've been more drawn to what I call outlier signals, that most people kind of ignore. And so most people focus on signals that are just only people, but I like to think about usage, gross demand, just like data in terms of like how people are using or doing things. So there was this line, at least in the venture capital community, that's pretty famous from one of the benchmark investors named Matt Kohler, and he said that his only job in the world is to see things as clearly as possible, and from there he can think about making a decision or an interpretation from that. Actually, that like resonated with me for a while, but I didn't know how to clearly think about articulating that. So at Tribe, over time, the ethos was grounded in finding power laws, and what I mean by that is how do you think about building systems or technologies that don't look like much at first, but they compound relentlessly? But how do you identify that really early, leading to lagging indicators? And then through that same lens, how do you look for early signs of durability, exponential behavior? And I think more so that is enumerated like so quickly and at such a fast pace in crypto and in AI in some cases. But crypto, you could just see that from a community perspective, open source perspective, new things that are being built. And so if I take a framework, like many of the most important innovations like today that you see in Bitcoin or DeFi are on-chain meme coins that are like misunderstood or dismissed, just like mobile was like really early in 2008, like the first versions, everyone kind of made fun of it, or AI in the early versions in 2015, machine learning, the AI. And so when I think about like how I spend my time or what my job is now to take as many of those early signals as possible, whether that be an early team, whether that be a company that we meet early, whether that be a community that I start engaging with, regardless of what that looks like. I think of it as what are those early signals that I can bring to scale in some cases, responsibly, securely, and in a way that like everyday people can access. And so that's why I built Tribe, and then it was very naturally cascaded into crypto and some of the work that I do at Kraken.
I think that's actually quite fascinating because I think one of the things that I've been grown fascinated by you is I feel like you're transitioning some of these traits and skills that you've learned in your past over to Kraken. I think that kind of leads us to our next topic, which I think is very interesting. From a personal or organizational standpoint, how would you describe Kraken's overarching philosophy when it comes to leading innovation and driving mainstream adoption of digital assets, concerning what you've learned in the past up until now?
So Kraken's, so I would urge everyone to go to the Kraken website and take a look at the Kraken culture doc. And we talk through like what Bitcoin means and what Bitcoin means not memes. And how do you think about proliferating that type of technology of crypto and the original thesis of the Bitcoin white paper and so on and so forth? And so if you take a look at Kraken's DNA and culture and how it's evolved, it's very aligned with Tribe's original mission and investment philosophy. So how do you be early? How do you be right? And how do you stay really principled? Not just disciplined, but principled. And so you're not trying to be everything for everyone. I think that's really key because a lot of people try to build the everything store, but then you become the nothing store in some cases. So if you really want to be the trusted backbone for the next era of financial infrastructure, it means you got to build safety. It means you got to build trust. It means you got to build. And then we got to make sure that the products that we build prioritize what I would call customer sovereignty. You need to make sure that you have some regulatory durability, and you need to make sure that you have deep technical rigor. I think those three things are really important. So when I say user sovereignty, what does that mean? It's that we're like the permissionless aspect and the freedom of what you get in crypto, we have to stay true to and fight for it in some cases. Regulatory durability makes it so that we have the ability to fight for it and to be able to deliver those products. And to be able to do all of the sovereignty and the durability, we have to be technical. We have to be able to build good products, and we have to be able to make sure that we can architect it for closed source, open source, whatever it may be. But if we're going to be able to promote a community as much as we're launching the Krak app for on-chain first users, or integrating runes, or supporting tokenized real-world assets through Ink, or launching xStocks. Our goal is to serve like what I would call the real economy of crypto and what the future real economy of crypto is going to be, and not just the speculative one. So when I go back to that sentence, how do you see the present really clearly? And what are the criteria you use for decision making? Ends up being like priority number one of merging those two ethoses together of what the Kraken DNA is, and then what I've been doing at Tribe for almost in the better half of most of my life of creating this infrastructure. So I think like innovation only really matters if it endures, and that's where it leads. And hopefully I can continue to do that at Tribe. I learn a lot there, and hopefully at Kraken we can do the same thing there, where I'm able to take a lot of those shared learnings, shared teams, shared infrastructure, shared products, and then continue to build on top of that.
That's actually, I love that you said that. I recently did some research on you, and there is this amazing interview of you on the New York Stock Exchange. And one of the things that really stood out to me was that you really believe in focusing on not just retail, but professional traders rather than just not only just the institutional. Some exchanges, they only support or want to focus on the institutional side. But I love that you were focusing on, the everyday retail trader or pro trader out there that literally has a family or sits in their house that isn't a bank or isn't a hedge fund. And I think that's one thing that I really noticed about you was you kind of are the voice of the people in some way. And that's why I want to talk about this whole Bitcoin DeFi space because it is an emerging sector. It's fairly new over the past 2 years. We've seen, well, not just like NFTs on Bitcoin, aka ordinals, but there's also these new fungible tokens. And based on how vocal you've been online, you are pretty much aware of that. And you have been informed and pretty much in touch with that economy. So my question to you is, with this emerging Bitcoin DeFi space, what aspects of this ecosystem really garner your attention and capture it? And where do you envision the evolution of the Bitcoin DeFi space this cycle or the next?
Yeah. So, I mean, first off, I appreciate the sentiment, but I'm definitely not a voice of the people. I would recategorize it as I love to jump into things where you can stay close to the field. So, let's draw a parallel. So one of the parallels and I think about this at Tribe all the time, which is when you're talking to a founder and they're looking to make an investment, they're looking to get in an investment. There's a power dynamic. You have capital, they don't. So they're vulnerable and they're putting everything on the line to be able to have that conversation. Okay, that's one. Two, is when you think about TradFi, they have capital, you don't, right? So access to capital, lending, mortgages, financial structure products, etc. And the average everyday individual citizen, constituent, however you want to define them, like you and me in some cases, don't have access. So we always feel vulnerable depending on what we're trying to do. And so the traditional financial system is, in my opinion, it's stacked against an everyday individual because it
Mm.
will always take from one aspect and serve the needs for another constituent, and then have to extract from another constituent to serve the needs of another. And I don't really like that because if you look at traditional infrastructure, traditional web companies, traditional technology companies, that's actually what happens. You extract from a larger cohort. It's kind of like insurance, and then you provide to people of capability and means. And so I think what the ethos for me at Tribe has been, and what it's taught me for a long time, is how do I continue to look for um, underpriced traction, which is like how do you invest behind that? That's your time, that's your capital, and that's your attention. And I know everyone forgets that those all those three things matter. So let's talk about Bitcoin DeFi for just an instant, right? So it's an underpriced traction. That's kind of how I defined it today. And it has all the markers of that. Okay, what are those? Ordinals, runes, DLCs. They're weird. Early, full of a ton of energy, but they're also forming what I call real ecosystems. Community is a real ecosystem, and everyone kind of forgets about that. We talked about it from way back in the day, from bulletin board services, open source communities. Um, over time those have evolved, Reddit, etc. But I think like what's truly interesting, and it took me a while to get there. It didn't happen for me immediately either. Is that there a lot of these communities are always forming real ecosystems. So Bitcoin has always been crypto's center of gravity. I don't know, for some reason, sometimes we forget about that. But it's been stuck in some kind of like what I would consider monetary minimalism. And that should, and I think in some cases is changing pretty fast. So like Ethereum, you can define as unlocked programmability. Bitcoin now is unlocking portability, maybe permanence, performance in some cases. And so I think that's really important, like maybe the three Ps, portability, performance, and permanence. So what does that mean for the ecosystem? And so when I think about Kraken, we see that at this, like just as we see this as the start of a multi-cycle build out, is that we want to be a place that supports that energy and supports that really early. And then we want to be the platform that brings the Bitcoin native innovation to global users, sorry, to users at global scale. Especially if it works, why not?
I actually wanted to respond to that because there is like a risk for anybody to be at the forefront of anything, right? Sometimes it's a risk if you see it as betting it all, or it's a different way. You can see it as you're actually doing it because you're seeing a long-term vision of this playing out. You just did your homework and understand pretty much all of this, and you pretty much want to build a foundation to allow other people to access it. And so what you basically said there was, for me, Bitcoin DeFi, or at least Bitcoin, the mother chain of all change, is becoming something evolving. It's becoming something new. And in fact, I think Kraken and you recognize that. And this actually goes to my next question, which is, since you saw these early signals with this emerging sector, you all of a sudden out of nowhere put a dog ticker symbol in your Twitter page, or aka your X page. And I will say, out of all my years since 2017, I've never seen any co-CEO or just a CEO alone do something like that. And so I'm actually curious because I don't think anybody has any context of this, of why you decided to do that. But what motivated this decision? And what does it mean to you personally or professionally?
I think that anything early that has some sort of traction, no matter what the monetary mechanism of it is cool, right? Like just like you just start there. And so any early signals of traction is attractive, especially if it has a growth velocity. I think maybe it's like I have two kids, right? And so when I think about what the growth of the experience was for when my kids were born, it was different when they were like, at conception to at their birth to their first, 6 to 12 months of their life. It's different experiences. What's cool about um, early stage movements or early stage capital or early stage companies is you get to see that again and again and again. So it's highly addictive actually. And then you see these patterns that you get to recognize, and we built a lot of quantitative methodologies to um, to identify it, but you still want to be a part of it, right? It's not something that you look at it as a transaction. I think a lot of public and private markets guys will be like, we love Amazon, we love Netflix, but then maybe they've never used the product in the way that it should be used. And so for me, I looked at, dog as an early signal for me at least, and maybe like it's possible a pivotal moment. Who knows? And so it wasn't. I think to be honest, I think it was just like a whim. I just saw something that was cool. Some people were sending it to me, and I was like, maybe I should pay more attention to this. I am in crypto at the end of the day, so I wonder what they're doing. And so I just got excited about it. The same way I play like a video game. Like my avatar is either one of the members of the Protoss, et cetera, and you get deep into it and you sort of get into a rabbit hole. And so bring this back to Tribe and I get in the rabbit hole of a lot of the companies that I support was that we just always pay close attention to early behavior, right? So you've seen the early behavior, we just talked about it. And it doesn't make sense to others. Like you might get ridiculed by it. People might make fun of you about it. People still make fun of me about dog. Even today, they're like, I don't understand what's in your Twitter profile or bio. Like, what are you tweeting? And it doesn't matter to me. It's just like, well, I'm in this zone right now where it matters to enough of a community, and that's great. And I'm having fun with them, and I'm spending time with them, and hopefully I can innovate with them over a period of time. And I want to do that not just once or twice, but four, five, six, seven times. And so I think dog was that for me. So it wasn't just a meme. I don't hold any outside of like a couple $1,000 just to support the community. It's not like I'm trying to make money up or down on it. I'm not a trader. I don't have any volatility, and so I try to be as open about that as possible. So I think it's cool that there's been a cultural accelerant from us, but so many other people that I've seen other exchanges starting to do the same thing on top of Bitcoin, which is like for which years has been viewed as super static to evolve or too static to evolve. And so by putting I don't know dog in my profile or my description or on LinkedIn, I think it was kind of like in homage to something that's just completely new and that's not part of a different accelerant. So, if it helped, that's cool. I didn't think it would. But if it's a spotlight that's meaningful to at least one person that's happening in Bitcoin, then I'd say like, great, we should continue to look again. And maybe this time it's different in terms of what's going to happen in the future.
I will say, and I really appreciate that transparency. And by the way, I love seeing your dog in the background, by the way. Um, Hearing that transparency and hearing that description really, I think, allows the viewers to understand that even though it was interesting to you and you inserted it in your profile pictures both on LinkedIn and X, it meant a lot to everybody in the community, not just Dog, but everybody in the fungible token ecosystem. Because for once, for over a year, we have been building as a community almost through the silence, wondering if anybody was ever paying attention to this. And what we also saw was something very interesting about Bitcoin as well, is that finally, more than just a store of value. So if people don't know by now, Kraken is the first tier one US-based exchange to list a Room token such as DOG for spot trading. And that happened on June 27th during the launch and is now available to trade. But I was actually very curious because there is a lot of promotional work from all the Kraken social accounts, from KrakenPro, Kraken Desktop, the official Kraken account as well. I mean, what is the underlying value or vision for Kraken to see for Bitcoin fungible tokens and meme assets for that matter?
So, what's been great about our experience here was that it kind of reminded us of what our experience was when, and not just me, but it brought, because I wasn't at the company right from the beginning, um, but it brought a lot of nostalgic memories from what Kraken was really early. All right. So let's just talk about Dog for a second, right? So it represents the future of like a culture and a protocol. Um, when I think about like what we've done at Tribe, we've always, emphasized like evaluating the stickiness of a product or an asset. So for Kraken, I think like supporting Dog was about not just listing another token, it was more about like endorsing a new wave of Bitcoin native user engagement, which I think like just think about that, right? Like Bitcoin native user engagement versus what we've seen in the alternative asset ecosystem or a new chain. And so I think bringing more light to assets like Dog also just bring new energy to the ecosystem. It brings new energy to our team and also built new energy to teams all over the world that are on different chains that might be in Asia or in Europe that like just thought that we wouldn't ever want to pay attention to them. And now we're like bombarded by them. Even for some folks that are Bitcoin native specific, right? And so I think it's cool. Like while we're also able to then stress test our native underlying infrastructure to be able to support this. So it's fun, but then it's also serious. And then we get very hardcore about like, well, what else do we need to do in order to make our products and services better? What do we need to do to be able to go reach out to early communities and ecosystems to be able to help support them as early in their journey as possible, which is something I think over a period of time we forgot because we've started thinking about it as a transaction rather than a movement from point A to point B to point C to point B. And I actually think like traditional ecosystems and exchanges, we probably actually have a lot to learn from them, right? When you think about NYSE or NASDAQ, when I'm in a as a Series A, B, or C company, they're actually reaching out and saying, "What can we do to help support you?" Because maybe along that journey, you get to a place where it makes sense to list with us. But there are years of that journey that you need to be able to hire people, think about the next stage, partner with folks, raise capital, et cetera, et cetera. So I think I think it's like if Bitcoin is to remain more relevant outside of what we see as from a transactional model that I just mentioned before, and can be even more relevant to the next generation beyond what we've been doing over the last 10 to 20 years. I do think it's really important to enumerate ways in which it needs to evolve without compromising its core. And you guys have done more for this than anyone else, right? So if Dog or the next set of Bitcoin native user engagement is the future, then we should be there to help support it along the way.
Absolutely. One thing that happened during Bitcoin Las Vegas, usually a lot of Bitcoin maxis attend that event. And sometimes other crypto enthusiasts from different chains like to just, get crypto curious and attend it. But when I went there, there were some members of the dog army that went to the Kraken event, but also there's surprising a lot of dog and rune presence there, which I had never seen before. And there was a dog booth, and so many people were asking questions around what are runes, what are runes. And I swear to gosh, the team members at the dog booth and many other people supporting runes were talking about Kraken. Like, did you hear Kraken's going to maybe list dog? We don't
Yeah.
know, it's speculation. And then all of a sudden it happened. And the reason I bring that up is because, because Kraken was the first to pretty much push runes into the mainstream media, or at least the mainstream of adoption, allowing normal retail investors, maybe even institutionals, to get access to buying this. In your personal opinion, and you don't have to answer this, but why do you think other exchanges aren't doing what you're doing? And why do you think Kraken may have the intention to lead by example moving forward?
Look, I mean, there's been so much history over the last 10 years on the tailwinds and the headwinds politically, regulatory wise, on what crypto is and what it shouldn't be, and from nefarious activities to gambling, et cetera. And what's really funny is if you go back in history to the early 1900s, they said the same thing about electricity, which is like, why do you need to stay up late at night? You're just gonna have do drugs, nefarious activities, and things that are not in line with the culture of what someone wanted. So the same thing about the telephone, so the same thing about computers, so the same thing about the internet, so on and so forth. And I think like uh, going back to what you asked me about tribe and then like with the culture that I wanted to get back to at Kraken. Again, you go back to our culture doc, is that like we at Tribe, my edge has always been that my team and I were always willing to go deep where others stayed on the surface. It's a really important point. Like most people regress to the mean and they stay on the surface. They don't want to go deeper, especially financial folks and financiers. And again, what I always get so excited about is like Kraken's ethos has been that same mentality. If you really think about the company, and so, sure, I mean, Runes is a complex protocol that requires actually extremely thoughtful integration. It wasn't easy. I'll admit that myself. I was going to the team, I'm like, how hard can this be? And I was like, boom, we got to do this. We got to do this. I'm like, okay, great. This requires a lot more than just blind conviction. And so I think a lot of exchanges are early to bet on any new primitive, right? Because they just don't want to be wrong. And I think it's really easy to just sort of sit and say, okay, well, I won't be fired for making this decision. I could be for this decision. And so I think what I've always tried to tell the team is like, let's just, it's okay to be wrong. Let's just course correct along the way. And so we're okay being early. Like we will make mistakes, but we'll learn a lot along the way. And if we didn't make a mistake, then we hit something that's really important and powerful towards like every community or ecosystem or primitive that we're thinking about. And because we know that there might be outsized opportunities there, and that's where usually those outsized opportunities live in the first place. So our listings of runes isn't like a it's not a marketing move. My hope is that it's a commitment to help build another layer of what people want to build on top of Bitcoin, from the infrastructure up.
You and Matthew Barbie, guys, if you don't know, is the VP of growth over at Kraken. You and Matthew have been pretty vocal uh, about the Runes integration. So basically, people were wondering when is Runes protocol going to be available on Kraken? Have you guys done it? And basically, we got confirmation online, confirmed, confirmed, and I thought that was amazing. And this gets DM'd to me and asked so many times, which is, do you think that we could potentially see in the future more runes being listed? And not only that, what would require more runes, at least those tokens, those memes for that matter, to be listed on Kraken? Is it community? Is it trading volume? Is it demand? Or is it so much more?
It's pretty multiplicative. Uh, and so right now, right, to answer the question, yes, we're actively evaluating additional Rune assets. But we're going to apply the same rigor we apply to anything. So how do you define traction? How do you define community energy? How do you define technical quality? And then how do you define long-term alignment with user value? And we do that across everything we do. And so not every meme is sustainable. Not every movement or community is sustainable, but it's something that we can take a look at and track. And nor do I think like every Rune asset will make it. That's okay. But I do think the ones that could define a new chapter in Bitcoin's utility, that's super cool. So we'll pay attention to it. And then I think as Kraken, we're going to be committed to listing high quality assets no matter what they are. Um, and that should continue to reflect, at least for what we're talking about here, those assets that re best reflect what runes can become: playful, yes, but also resilient and trusted, energy, quality, long-term alignment. Like we're gonna be focused on that, and we'll want to help promote it.
We're getting close to our last three questions, and it's getting juicy because soon we're going to talk about what you're building as well within Kraken. But before we get there, I do want to ask this one thing regarding maybe your perspective or maybe Kraken's perspective on the evolving meme coin sector. So everybody on crypto Twitter is saying meme coin cycle coming this, meme coin cycle coming that. But in your eyes, what does that mean to you? What is a meme coin super cycle look like? If it is, does it even really matter? And do you think, say, for instance, Dog, being the number one fungible token on Bitcoin, how it could emerge as maybe the most sought after meme asset, maybe even surpassing legacy meme coins such as Dogecoin or Shiba Inu or any of those other blue chips for that matter? I mean, what are your thoughts on that, if that is something that maybe potentially could happen? And how is Kraken positioned to capture that market share and mind share?
Let's take let's take Kraken out of it for a second. So we're just talking
Mm,
about meme coins.
yeah.
So meme coins are just, I think inherently, actually, we'll go take a step back on memes. I think memes in general are and have been like often misunderstood. Um, and it's because they defy any traditional framework. And then when you put the word coin next to it, so meme coin, then it defies traditional valuation frameworks, right? Like, what is the value of this asset? And so what is the value of any asset that doesn't make revenue in the beginning? You are always leaning into gross demand, you're leaning into behavior before spreadsheets. And I think it's really important to focus on behavior, right? Before spreadsheets. Like what does that actually mean, right? It means engagement and it means community and then it means usage in some capacity. And so is that quantifiable and is that measurable? And so let's now talk about Dog. So it's got like a bunch of the right ingredients. It's got a strong meme. It's got an extremely sticky community. It's got a massively credible infrastructure that's been built. Just imagine the amount of time it's taken to build that infrastructure. And it's got an alignment with Bitcoin's natural cultural gravity, right? Like around what we had mentioned before versus what it is today and what it could look like in the future. And so if you can continue to sustain that over multiple cycles, hype or not, then it has a real shot at becoming, maybe crypto's most iconic meme asset. Why not? Why not take that shot? For the rest of the community that's out there. And so at Kraken, why wouldn't we want to be a part of supporting that story? Why wouldn't I, as an individual, want to be a part of supporting that story? It's not because it's popular, because it's very, very meaningful to an existing set of users and then the next wave of customers on what that will mean to them. And so then again, how does that track back, right? It's a form of expression. It's something that people value, and you can't put a number to something that enough people put value to. You can't say they're wrong. Um, and so if they decide that they want to save, store, yield, stake, whatever, and build around that, and then we can help support it with some of the other products that we're making, like it's an incredible place to be that meaningful to that many customers worldwide, right? We're talking about, you know, 2, 5, 8 billion people at some point where we might be able to get access to like some of this permissionless meme coin.
That's very informative. I love that perspective. We have to talk about these products now because, yes, we can buy dog on Kraken and hopefully future runes in the future. We'll see how that goes. But we have to talk about, first of all, the innovations that Kraken is leading. And I want to talk about three things. I want to talk about the Krak app. Maybe some people don't understand it and what is that all about. KrakenPro, I think that's very much sought after in terms of like, people want to set limit orders or whatever. And then there's also the Ink Chain. But when we talk about these three products, Krak app, KrakenPro, and the Ink Chain, why should people sign up for these? What tools can they offer? And maybe rewards or benefits from trying these things out or signing up?
Sure. So we've got a multiple suite of products. So we have Krak, which is our newest one. We have Kraken Pro. We have our consumer trade app that's called Kraken. And then we're contributors to the Ink Foundation, which is our Ink Layer 2 based off of Optimism. And so I think what's really more important is like how are we bridging the gap between what I call traditional financial products and traditional intent products, and then what's happening in crypto, and then what's happening in decentralized finance. Obviously, we call it DeFi. So I think the products that we build are more than anything that I could say is our clearest and most like succinct articulation of our belief that like financial systems should be fast, open, user-centered, secure, and permissionless. Like that's what we want to be able to build on top of. And so like what does that actually mean? Like Arjun, what are you talking about? So we have an exchange, and all of these products are built upon the exchange in terms of distribution or getting engagement or getting liquidity for our customers or using that liquidity to build the service. So Krak, my hope is that this would be an app that could be for billions of users. It's on-chain native, it's mobile first, it's built for discovery. And I do think it's something where culture and capital meet. Remember when I said that a lot of people focus on the financial transaction, but again, what would it mean that like after this, I'll do it. Like I'll get your username. If I send you $100 of dog, that's just way more meaningful than for me to just send you $100. That's it. It's that simple. Or Fartcoin, right? Or Dogecoin from the past, or Bitcoin, or Ethereum, and just the list goes on, right? And so the meme coin is an expressive format. Then there's monetary formats. Then there's digital gold formats, if you want to call it that. There's tokenized security formats. There's no reason why you can't share this 24/7, 7 days a week, for free and permissionless, and that's part of the goal. So that's Krak. Now, Kraken Pro is a product that we had for what I could say it's for our most advanced execution of what our professional traders want, and we built that to have like a unified access to spot, margin, futures, and it's trusted by professional traders because it performs, right? Again, and the reason why it performs is that it's vertically integrated into our exchange. It's fair, it's secure. We don't have any deals with large market makers and takers to be able to monetize on the side. That if you decided to trade or buy, you're not coming in behind someone else that's got a discount. Like it's just what we believe is to be fair and free and permissionless in some cases, or to enact in that direction that we care about. And then for Ink Change, yeah, it's programmable infrastructure. What do we think we'll be able to do with it over time? I think we'll be able to do tokenized assets. I think we'll be able to do tokenized funds. I think we'll be able to think about stocks, RWAs, experimental protocols. And I think part of it is that, what we do what we contribute to in the layer two and incentivize, then we can figure out how to bridge the gap again between what happens in DeFi and what's happening at a traditional finance level. And I think what we can do with our centralized exchange infrastructure is to make sure that we're always going to stay chain agnostic, but security maximalists. And I think that's really important. Like because we're security conscious, then each one of these products that we have can unlock a new way to learn, to trade, to build, to save, to get yield. And our aim is to be the most complete and trusted access for the point of crypto. But like that's what we used to say before. But I think it's going to be like the most complete and trusted access for financial products. Like how can we continually be much more evenly distributed around the financial products that we want to be able to deliver. And I think regardless of where we start, we're going to be where the user starts.
Something that just came out just now. I just remember that Kraken offers purchases of xStocks, so we can buy into different shares, which has never been done before. This is like one of the very first times where normal retail investors of ages that never, can sign up for a Charles Schwab account very easily or did what their parents did can now actually get equity in these in real life companies. Is this X stocks or are these things here to stay? Do you think it's temporary? Is it just something that you're willing to explore? What's the potential there, do you think?
Let me put it this way, I think this is gonna be tokenized equities done right. And so what do I mean by that? It's like a pretty strong statement versus what everyone else has been doing. You've got a lot of veneer, you've got a lot of surface level stuff and not a lot of early movement. And so what I said before is that I think part of Kraken's ethos is, how do we get more crypto out there? How do we make sure um, it's evenly distributed and we're working in a partnership model, not what I'd say zero sum? Is that like what we're doing with xStocks is like actually never been done before. People have tried, but they've had different versions of it. So not because it wasn't like possible technically, but I think it wasn't approached with the right mix of conviction, compliance, infrastructure, and open source aspect of it. And so what does that mean? So most attempts at tokenized equities in the past have either been closed-ended, they're like synthetic products, there's no real market depth. They have unscalable wrappers, right? And so like I just consider it fake. So it's gated to a few users. It's like extremely restrictive licenses, or it's offshore experiments disconnected from any real world regulatory expectations, security, even ownership. So at Kraken, I think like what we studied from the beginning specifically was that like what do we care about? Why do our customers come to Kraken in the first place? So we start with the customer. So they want global access, they want 24/7 trading, they want programmable collateral. This is really important. They want unified collateral on top of that. So how do you build that for first principles? So everything must be verifiable, everything must be liquid, and I think last and most important is everything should be chain neutral. That isn't how people think. They think very zero sum. So now you got to make it real. So it's backed one to one by actual securities. It's not a spreadsheet or a promise, right? It's literally we're not trying to mimic traditional equity markets. We're building like the ideally, and we've already started. It's got a lot of traction, so I'm like super fucking pumped up about it. Is that it's open, it's on chain, it's composable with the rest of crypto. So you can think of xStocks as like another foundational layer that we would call a power law financial primitive. Like, why not? Like, we've been able to do the first aspect of it, and it doesn't mean that there isn't going to be more foundational layers or primitives. It's just that like it's small now, but it then rewires how capital can move in the long term. So it's not just a product. I think it's another bet on how we think about convergence between the merging of public markets, the merging of programmable assets, 24/7 global liquidity, and I think Kraken is the only exchange that A is willing to take the risk, similar to how we did with Dog, that could be credibly shipped this at scale with partners, with trust, with posture, regulatory wise, and then infrastructure to support it. And so like you can look at this online, right? Like the AUM has continued to get larger. More and more partners are coming on board. BNB and Solana have, marked that they're going to support it. And more people are just doing it without even talking to the xStocks platform or the alliance. And I think that's, super clear.
I am super amped now. You got me so hype on this. I can't wait to explore it more. But we do have to get we do have to close this interview off. So, as much as I enjoy having you on the show and I just want to keep going, this is the final question I have for you and it's final thoughts. So, as we look forward to the next phase of crypto adoption for Bitcoin DeFi to meme coins, even regulation within the US and beyond, I mean, what message would you leave with the community about Kraken's overall vision and hopefully its role to play shaping the future of this evolving industry?
Like I get out of bed and I get excited about a bunch of things. When the world is just moving faster and faster, when you think about what AI is doing to help proliferate at a faster pace, the hardware that's getting up and running, And then crypto to be able to be augmented by all of that movement and change is tremendous because we're only 10 years old, roughly. Um, and we're gonna have another 10 years. And what we thought were jokes are gonna be like financial primitives of the future. It's like, I don't know, it's so exciting that you're able to sort of be a part of that. And so I think what Kraken continues to aim to be, and this is a lot of what I try to pull in from my experience at Tribe and what I've gained so much experience from while being at Kraken, because there's just been a tremendous amount of people that have been there for so long. Is that like how do we continue to build conviction around what others continue to underestimate? That's what we're always going to continue to build at Kraken. And so backing primitives that are weird, early, engaged, and full of potential, we're going to do that. It's not going to change. How do we build products on top of that? We're going to continue to focus on that too. And so I don't think crypto needs to become more like TradFi to win. I think TradFi will eventually need to figure out how to adapt to what crypto is in order for them to become something else and to boom. And hopefully we continue to get there first, right? Because we're continuing to innovate and take those risks. And so my thought process is that like our role is to continue to accelerate that shift because we win, but then we can do it securely, credibly, and without compromise so that people can trust us on both sides of traditional finance and what's happening in DeFi. And so I don't think the next 10 years are going to belong to the people that are the loudest. I don't think it's going to belong to the people that create headline news and media. I think it's going to belong to the folks that just keep building and have like a pirate style attitude. And I think like we're going to continue to commit to making sure that that crypto, at least as long as we're around and what we can continue to support is that it belongs to people that are builders. And at Kraken, like our commitment, or at least as long as I'm around too, is that we'll just keep building.
And everything that you said so far has been absolutely inspirational. I can tell you are a very unique human being, and I really appreciate you being on the show. Our viewers have learned so much from you and everything that you provide in terms of the feedback and education, because we now know a lot more now than we did before this interview started. I like seeing Kraken's brighter future as a leader in this evolving space, and I just want to personally thank you for being on the show, letting the dog army know, the Bitcoin DeFi space know, the meme coin culture, tokenized stocks, everything for that matter. You absolutely have our support over at the Dog Army, Bitcoin Runes ecosystem, and also the future of Bitcoin DeFi. We hope to have you on the show again, and thank you so much for spending time with us today.
If I was to say one thing is like I appreciate people's sentiment. I want to be able to I'm able to work alongside them, especially with you guys like myself, Kraken. We're just lucky to be able to work alongside the teams that are focused on this stuff outside of Kraken. And so I'd say that like you guys are pushing the edges every single day on what's possible. And so if I've sparked anything, I thank you, I appreciate it. But you guys have sparked a lot more, right? And it's only because we're only able to do what we're doing today because we've had the chance to learn from you guys doing the real work along the way. So all I would say is that I hope that you guys continue to keep building at the same time.
Absolutely. You can guarantee that we'll be right there beside you, but we really appreciate it. Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure to sign up for Kraken, KrakenPro, try out the Krak app, and also sign up for InkChain if you want to test these products out. They are available. We just had the co-CEO of Kraken, Arjun Sethi, on our show. Arjun, thank you so much, and we hopefully will see you again in the future.
Thanks for having me.